Yeah, this is Gary Richard Arnold. It's June 2011. We're at the Conspiracy Conference. And one of the things that is ignored a little bit is the ongoing Agenda 21. We're talking about the chemtrails. We're talking about the wars in Libya. We're talking about the conspiracy of socialism. But during the same time, in every hamlet, every city, every county, we have a process of Sovietization going on, and it's called Agenda 21. This operation in the United States began at the University of Chicago, an address called 1313, which is the clearinghouse for public administration. There, they put together unions for every job within inside a city or a county, whether it has to do with the treasurer, the city manager, or the county administrative officer. There are unions for every one of these jobs, and they're all controlled. They were all set up and designed by the University of Chicago, which was Rockefeller funded. During some years before that, a man by the name of Charles Merriam, again, a Rockefeller operative, put together the so-called scientific control of a city manager system in which the city council and the mayor turn the management of their city over to a trained manager. These managers inside the United States, in most city charters and independent charters, or cities that have been, or in cities that have been given the authority of the state to exist, have within their charters or within their rules a requirement to have a city manager. And again, these people are trained. The managers are not required to be citizens in most cases. They're not required to live even in the city itself, and they're not required to be a citizen of the United States. These trained managers also, inside most of the charters, say that in times of emergency, they're the ones that take over control. It's not your elected officials that are merely the window dressing to give you the false impression that they are allowed to control or manage the city that you elect them for. During their campaigns, they tell you about all the wonderful things that they are going to do. But again, written in stone in most of these city charters, they're forbidden under penalty of fine and jail to go themselves to a city department without going through first the city manager. So the fraud of self-government inside the United States is real. Most people think that they're still free and they're still electing representatives. But these representatives, in addition, with these cities, have been broken into regions. This is something we addressed some 20 years ago in the city of Detroit during the convention when Ronald Reagan was running for president. There were 3 candidates running. They were all trilateralists. And this was a Republican convention in Detroit 30 years ago. Now, this certainly shows its age, but it calls for Reagan for president. This was in order to get the information about the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission inside the convention to those delegates. Thank you. And on this tabloid, we put the Council on Foreign Relations, or control of the unions, of the media, the cabinets, those that were members of both the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. It also shows those that are in the media and those controlling the unions. So again, it's virtually an SS, like Hitler's SS. They operate in the foundations and in the American institutions. Inside the same tabloid, we looked at regional dictatorship. This is, again, how the Agenda 21 and regional government is occurring. I'm going to read you just what one governor of Colorado said when he was talking about regional government and its effect on individual representative government. This is Governor Carr of Colorado. He says a regional authority constitutes the most violent attack on the American constitutional way of life and has been made, if unchecked, will develop into the bitterest issue which the American people have encountered since slavery. He says, there exists in this country today a plan to commence a remodeling of American lives on the basis so dictatorial, so monarchistic, so bureaucratic that its very exposition proves its hostility to our American form of government. But he goes on paragraph after paragraph concerning the destruction of self-government. Now, the other half of this page, it showed where my other half? I guess I just unfolded. Thank you. When we were doing our expose, we were showing already how the regional agencies were converting Europe. Remember, this is 30 years ago, and we're talking about Great Britain being regionalized here. It says, not great anymore. Great Britain, there are no states or even counterparts. Local governments have fallen historically, derives its authority from the national government. There is no separation of powers. The Parliament is an easy place to make a special commission and white papers to influence local action. There's information in here on when Belgium was regionalized in 1970, France was regionalized in 1964. We refer to it as a new Nazism. This was the preface before the European Union. At that same time, we were exposing that Ronald Wilson Reagan was for 13 years a member of the United World Federalists, working with Cord Meyer, CIA, in order to advance his career, and he did propaganda throughout his life for the benefit of the world conspiracy. When Ronald Reagan was governor of the state of California, he issued through executive orders, and we have the number on here, the regionalization of the state of California. California now, its cities and states are broken into regions inside the state, which are in our Monterey areas called AMBAG, the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. The local cities and counties meet out of sight from the newspapers that never attend or report of these meetings. They make policy at these regional meetings. Also, the people that are funding these regional meetings are part of the the international community, including local foundations such as Packard and Rockefeller, the utilities organization in the northern part of California is referred to as PG&E. They are one of the major funders. They take taxpayers' money, or ratepayers' money, and they use it to create policy. Both PG&E and these regional agencies belong to ICLEI, which is a front for the World Bank. And what happens during this time throughout the state of California is the power plants are being picked up by Blackstone, which is former head of the Council on Foreign Relations. The vice chairman of Blackstone is Alan Schwartzman, who's a member of Skull and Bones. But when you talk about the power, the newspapers, such as Bill Gates, who bought through his foundation the San Jose Mercury, the Monterey Herald, and the Santa Cruz Sentinel. The other newspapers in our region are owned by the Gannett newspapers, which is operated out of McLean, Virginia, right alongside the CIA. In addition, in our counties here, we had the Santa Cruz local Agenda 21. It's not local in any way, shape, or form. When we read on the inside cover, we find out the United Nations organizations from New Haven to San Francisco to Santa Cruz funded this report, in which all policy is designed by these supporters, by the United Nations. It is designed to create a North American Union, just like they've created a European Union, and to convert us to a feudalism and the absolute abolishment of representative government. One of the persons that exposed a lot of the regionalization in the Agenda 21 is a major called Major Arch Roberts. He was the assistant to General Walker, who was a general in Europe that put together a pro-blue program advocating education of the American troops of the Constitution and their inheritance. and he was pulled immediately from his command, and he was taken back to the United States and thrown in a mental institution in which he was tested within the next 10 days to be shown as one of the sharpest minds in the country. But his involvement in history continues when people look up that particular name. But Major Arch Roberts had his finger on this organization for some time. In fact, if you go back to Philip Drew, Administrator, a book written by Woodrow Wilson's right-hand man, Colonel House, you'll find the advocation of a North American Union in that particular novel, which was designed as a blueprint. He also advocated a dictatorship. The hero in that particular book is a person that took over militarily and nationalized most of the private organizations, the exact model that Obama is following presently. And he seems to be the boy from Brazil, the designed president that is ushering in the new world Nazism. In fact, that's what, again, it was called, the subheading of the newspaper I showed you just a few minutes ago. This continues. It's one of the most serious applications of tyranny because it's happening in your own community on the local level. And while we're watching the international forces play back and forth in war, and we see the poisonous, we're inhaling the poisonous death dumps, but through the chemical trails, we're being anesthetized in that way. But we can also immediately seize, go back to our local governments and have a representative on there. They are responsible for what comes down in the air, or what goes in your water, or how the fields are being changed with their acidity or alkalinity. These are the people you need to talk to so they can wrestle back the power that they've turned over to city managers, which are wired from the top down. And right now, all the forces are pushing for the next, the conspiratorial forces are pushing for the next emergency in which they can declare martial law to eradicate what is left of local government. But right now, you've got control of that, and you need to reassert, get involved, use your local institutions for disseminating this really valuable information. But Agenda 21 is the poison network. This is setting up the so-called Nazi operatives throughout the communities. And they're continually, through their meetings, they do not set policy. Their policy is given to them again through the clearinghouse at 1313 Chicago. They've moved some of those headquarters to Washington, D.C. And the newspapers are in coordination to keep all of this silent. By the way, during this next week, the Bilderbergers are meeting once again in Europe, and the newspapers that Bill Gates owns, both Bill and Melinda Gates are members of the Bilderberger Society. They will once again keep the people in the dark in our community. I don't know about yours.